I have a word from the Lord for this morning. So if you have your Bibles, just jump to 1 Samuel chapter 30. 1 Samuel chapter 30, if you have your Bibles. I'm going to read our main text and then we'll kind of jump in. 1 Samuel 30 says this, "Now it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag, that on the third day that the Amalekites had invaded the south in Ziklag, attacked Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was, burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep, and David's 2 wives had been taken captive. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord, his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, please bring the ephod here to me. And Abiathar brought the ephod to David. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. A covenant that God made to him. So David went, and he and 600 men who were with him came to the brook Besor, where those who stayed who were left behind. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook Besor. Then they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David, and they gave him bread, and he ate, and they let him drink water, and they gave him a piece of cake and figs, 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. And David said to him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? I'll tell you right now, the devil is after this generation, and they're missing their identity. And he said, I am a young man from Egypt, servant of an Amalekite, and my master left behind because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Cherethites and the territory which belongs to Judah and the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, can you take me down to this troop? He said, swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master. I will take you down to this troop. And when he had brought him down, there they were, spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Then David attacked them from twilight until evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives, and nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and the herds they had driven before them, all those livestock, and said, this is David's spoil. Ooh, we're about to get into it this morning. Woo! My message this morning, I want to declare in the house of New Life, it is not over. It is not over. Years ago, Bishop preached this message, Bishop Thomas, and then years later, Pastor Mark preached it, and now years later, I felt like God put on my heart, preach a message that it is not over to New Life, to the city of Poland, and to the surrounding area. My subtitle this morning is called, It's Not Over, a Suit and a Laptop. A suit and a laptop. Now, I'm going to get into it in a little bit this morning, but this right here, I have my closet has so many suits. I was going to wear a different suit this morning, but this is my John Arnold suit. And I'm going to talk about why this suit is so important to me and how this suit and that man has impacted my life. This right here, this is my Dennis Ganatis laptop. I'm going to tell you why this is my Dennis Ganatis laptop, although this laptop belongs to me now. So, there's two types of people. If you're around people that give to you and then remind you of it over and over again, you're around someone that manipulates you, not someone that's a giver. Some of you have surrounded yourself with manipulators, and you keep pleasing them because they keep reminding you what they've done for you. You need to get away from those people. All right, so anyway, this is my family. This is me, my beautiful wife, Miranda. If you have the anointing of God, you can marry a 10, even if you're a 4. Youth boys, listen to me. That's right. We got 2 boys, Samuel, who's 3 years old, and Xander, who's 1 year old, and they both test my patience on a daily basis. Christmas morning, I got so excited. I was like, let's go! Presents! And Samuel just had a complete meltdown, so I was more excited than him. But that's my beautiful family. And then the next picture is our staff. We have an amazing staff here at New Life. And I realized quickly that the staff here is what makes everything look good. Like, this ladder was put together by Angela and Krista and Pastor Lori. We have tables set up, but we have an amazing team. And I told them, I said, if you guys worked anywhere else, you'd be making 6 digits easily if you went into the business world. I told Angela, I said, you should go work for Elon Musk. But we have people that are go-getters. I remember we were in a meeting, and I was like, I want to take the students down to Hamilton, Alabama. And I'm saying that, and Andrew's like, all right, the tickets are booked, the charter bus is done, and the hotel. I was like, I didn't even finish my thought, and you already got the bus on its way. So she's like, you're leaving on this day at this time. I'm like, what is happening? But one of my favorite things about our staff is having pastors that believe in the next generation. This morning, I'm going to tell you a story of my brokenness in the year of 2022, the lowest point in my life, and I'm going to talk about how I went from the lowest point to the highest point in my life within 1 year and the difference that a year can make. But I want to let you know that there were 2 pastors that believed in me, saw the call of God upon me, and they're not only pastors that believe in the generation before them, but they are a bridge between the baby boomer generation and Generation Z, bringing and linking us together. And I believe that is why revival will fall at New Life, because we have pastors that are bringing the generation together. They're bringing different demographics together. Pastor Dave believes in all of it. And behind every strong man is a strong woman. So David, he comes to the city of Ziklag, and the Bible says that they had traveled for 3 days. And if you look at different commentaries, militaries get between 15 to 25 miles is how much they get in a day. So we have these militaries that have walked for 3 days, and they're probably exhausted. Anyone here enjoy vacation? Anyone here, when you go on vacation, when you go to the beach and you get back, you need a vacation from your vacation? Let me explain this for a second. Me and my wife are polar opposites in this. You see, my wife on vacation likes to just relax, hang out. Let's go sit on the beach every day and die of boredom for hours and read boring romantic books. I like to pack every single minute full. We wake up, we're going to go go-karting. When we finish go-karting, we're going to go to the mall. Then we're going to go shopping. And when we're done with that, we got all these different sightseeing places to go to. We'll go to the beach for 10 minutes so you can look at the water, touch the water. We're going to leave the beach. Then we're going to go down the boardwalk. When we're done that with the boardwalk, we're going to go take the kids to the different water parks. And by the time we get back, Miranda's like, I went on vacation with you. It didn't even feel like vacation. I live my life like that. So I just like, when we go to the office with Dennis, like I'll be like, all right, what time are we getting lunch? Where are we going to lunch? Who are we inviting to lunch? And Dennis is like, whoa, I have work to do. I'm like, I understand. You can work on your laptop while we're sitting at lunch talking about the future and all the goals that we have to hit. Then he's like, do you know you do have an office in this building? So just, these soldiers didn't need a vacation from a vacation. They're exhausted. They are tired. They have walked for 3 days. They have covered roughly between 50 to 75 miles. And after covering all of that territory, they get to their city of Ziklag, and they probably saw out in the distance smoke. They probably saw their city on fire. And even though they're exhausted, they're tired, they probably took off running to see what is going on. Why is our city on fire? The reason that city was on fire was because David left the city of Ziklag unguarded. David had taken his troops, he had taken the Israelites up north to help fight with the Philistines, and in the moment of him leaving the city unguarded, the Amalekites had come, plundered their city, burned everything, and took his family with them. There's so many things to hit, but I'm going to start with just a couple from the beginning. When David comes back and he had left his city unguarded, we read in Deuteronomy that the Amalekites, when they would attack the Israelites, God reminds them and says, don't you remember when the Amalekites would come behind the Israelites and they would take the stragglers, they would take the people that were walking slowly? See, the Amalekites were cowards. They would always go after the weak. They didn't attack the city when the men were there to defend it. Oh, men. I'll score up right now. No, they came to attack the city. I tell my wife all the time, the lock on our front door is not for our protection. It's for the person on the other side. You breaking in my... Okay, I'm not going to go into that. All right. So they get back, but here's the thing. This city had been burned with fire. David gets there. He had left this city unguarded, and the enemy loves to attack you while you're weak. The enemy loves to attack you while you're knocked down. And if you're in this room and you're like, things are weak right now, my marriage is a mess, and I feel like my marriage keeps getting attacked, because the enemy loves to attack the weak things in your life. And if you're in here and your marriage is struggling, I'm here to tell you it's not over. If you're in this room and your kids have walked away from God, and they're making a mess, I'm here to tell you it's not over. If you're in here, you've lost a job, you don't know how you're going to provide, you don't know where the finances are going to come through, the enemy might be attacking you while you're weak, but I'm here to tell you it's not over. If you're in here and you got a doctor's report that's a negative doctor's report, we were told that our son would have cysts on his brain. Let me tell you, Xander is perfectly healthy. There isn't a cyst on his brain. Why? Because it is not over. Someone say, it's not over. So David gets back. But the reason why this fire had happened was because David had abandoned the village. Can I tell you this morning that if you are in a crisis and you abandon your family, something will fill your position. The reason why David's wives were taken was because he wasn't there. He was absent. And sometimes in a crisis, we become absent in our family, and then we wonder why our family turns to all these different things. But it's because when you become absent in a crisis, something else will fulfill your role. I've watched it happen. People in a crisis, and so what they do, they fill every part of their life with something busy. Oh, I got to go mow the grass. I mean, you do have to mow the grass. I got to go work on the house. Oh, I have all these different projects. I'm going to stay at work extra long, but I'm doing all these things. I'm filling in my schedule because I'm in a crisis, and I'm going to make sure to fill everything. But here's the problem. You abandon your children when you do that. I had a mother one time come to me. This was at a different church, and she said, hey, I need you to counsel my daughter. My daughter is just out of her mind. It took me like 3 minutes to figure out the reason why her daughter was acting the way that she was because this mother was absent in her life. This girl continued to tell me, she's like, my mom is never home. She's always at work. And when she is home and she has free time, she goes out with her friends and leaves me at the house by myself. So I told the mother, after the meeting, I said, the reason why your daughter is responding the way she is because you are not there for her. The mom got mad at me, left the church. Deuces. Listen, I say it how it is. I speak the truth. Not as much as Dennis. We went to a house one time. These people wanted to sell their house, and we walk in, and This house had not been updated since the 1940s. Original walls, everything original. And I remember we walked into the bathroom, and it looked like someone had taken I'm not joking, it looked like someone took a sledgehammer to the bathroom. There's like 3 tiles left hanging in the bathroom. There's holes in the walls, but in the middle of this destroyed bathroom that looked like someone took a stick of dynamite and put it in, there's a brand new vanity. I'm like, what? They're like, we increased the value of our house, we put a brand new vanity up. Dennis was like, I hate to break it to you, but this bathroom is dilapidated. The pipes are hanging out the wall. There are holes. I can see the next room over. The door almost fell off when we opened it to walk into the property. You can't even, we had to walk like, I thought I was gonna need a hepatitis shot. I was like, I need a mask. Dennis shot straight with them. Sometimes you just gotta shoot straight with people. Sometimes I'm like, he's like, no. Dennis, he told me this from the beginning. We're always honest with people. So all of this happens, and he comes back. Everything is burned with fire. And what I've learned in life is sometimes in seasons, it can feel like everything in your life is burned by fire. Sometimes in seasons, it can feel like everything you have has been stripped away. Sometimes in seasons, it can feel, although you're like, my house hasn't been burned by fire, my life hasn't been burned by fire, my kids are still alive. Sometimes in a crisis, it can feel like everything has been burned away. You might be in this room and you're like, my house is still standing, but I feel like I'm in a fire. My house is there, but I feel like every area of my life is falling down and crumbling, and I'm here to tell you this morning, it's not over. Could we get some pad behind me for a second here? If I could have Antoine or someone come up. So watch what happens next. David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and daughters, but David strengthened himself in the Lord. Can I tell you, in a crisis, what the enemy would love to do is for you to isolate yourself, for you to run away, for you to get alone. The enemy loves to isolate us. But I want to tell you this morning that when things get hard, you run to the house of God. You run to Sunday mornings. You surround yourself with some believers that say the promises of God are yes and amen. I know that your child ran away from God, but let me just remind you the covenant and promises of God. My Bible says that if you train up a child in the ways of the Lord, that they won't depart from it. My God says that He's our provider. You got to surround yourself with some people that believe in you. Could you give me some pad for a moment? I'm going to speak on something that I haven't spoken on from a pulpit yet, but this is the first time I'm going to. See, when David strengthened himself in the Lord, he had to have faith in God. Our faith doesn't kick in when we have everything we need. I don't have faith when I turn on my water, because I know that when I turn on my water, water's going to come out. I don't have faith for my electric to turn on when I walk in and hit my lights, because I know when I flick the switch, my lights are going to come on. But in certain parts of Africa, there are families that have to have faith in God to provide for water, because if they don't find that water that day, they know they will perish. You see, faith kicks in where our human ability stops. Faith kicks in where we can't do what we need to do. This morning, I want to tell you a little bit about my story and the darkest season I walked through, which was last year. Something about me, you're not supposed to live on the mountaintops, you're supposed to live in the middle of the mountain. I live on the mountaintop all the time. Like, I am hyper all the time. I'm excited all the time. Like 24/7, it never turns off. I wear my heart on my sleeve. But there was a season for the first time in 30 years of my life where I wasn't living on the mountaintop, but I was literally trudging through the valley. I was a broken man, and I had no idea how I was going to continue on. And it's one thing to preach about the faithfulness of God. It's one thing to sing about the faithfulness of God. It's one thing to sing about waiting on God. But what happens when you're in the fire? What happens when you don't know how you're going to provide? In February of 2022, I lost my job. A couple months later, the location I worked at ended up closing down. I was so scared. You see, can you put up the picture of my family? I had to provide for my family. My wife was pregnant. We had a baby on the way. The baby was supposed to come in 2 months. I had a son, Samuel, that I provide for. I had to provide for my wife. I was the sole provider of my family, and I lost my job. And I was so scared. I remember waking up the next morning. I was crushed. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to provide. I only know how to do one thing. I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay my bills. Now, one thing I want you to learn is there's a co-laborship with God. If you're in this room and you're praying for a miracle and you haven't done your part, you better do your part. Now, my wife and I had 6 months of savings saved up. We had a fallback plan, and I know some of you in this room, you're like, I can't have a savings because of different medical conditions going on in my life. I'm not speaking to you, but those of you that just bought a flat screen TV for $2,000 and you have $6 in your saving account and you need God to do a financial breakthrough, stop being dumb with your money. The first thing I did when I lost my job, my wife and I went to church every single Sunday morning. Every single Sunday we went to church and just kept trusting and waiting on God. And even though I didn't feel like singing, I would lift up my hands and I would praise God because he was my provider. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't God's fault. That's just how the cards fall sometimes. So I had to trust in God. And I remember coming to church every week, but the first thing I did was I went and I saw my grandparents, Ronald and Lenka, and I spent some time with them because what I learned is you strengthen yourself in the Lord, but sometimes you got to get around some wise counsel. Don't get advice in a crisis from people who are in a crisis. So I went and I spent some time with my grandparents, and they knew what I was going through. And of course, there's people always going to be fine. Okay, you say that when you don't have a job. My best friend lost his sister a couple months ago, and they had to pull her off the plug. It was a horrible situation. There were so many things. The following Sunday when he came to church, someone walked up and said, I wish you had faith, because our person, they told us to pull them off the plug, and then they made a full recovery. I'm like, who says that the following week to the person who just made that decision? You have no idea the hell they just walked through. You have no idea but sometimes people just say the dumbest things. The next thing I did after I talked with my grandparents and spent some time and ate healthy and disconnected from social media was I made one of the most important phone calls in my life. I made a call to a man named Dennis. I was a young man. I was terrified. I didn't know anything about the business world, and I was so scared. And I called a man named Dennis Ganatis, and he answered on the other side. I said, Dennis, I lost my job, and I don't know how I'm going to provide for my family. And Dennis said, oh, it's okay, Alexsey. You can work for me. He said, you know what? I haven't even told anyone this. The only person that knows this is my wife. But me and this man named John Arnold, we're opening up a brokerage. And I want you to come, and I want you to work in the brokerage with me. And you know what? You can be my admin, and you can do all the work, and I'll pay you by hour. And you know what? If you go to school, I'll even pay for your school. You see, in the story of the Amalekites, we read about this man who was broken on the side of the road and hadn't eaten, but they stopped, and David said, feed that man. I was the broken man with no food. And Dennis saw me and said, he's broken, but I'm going to help him out. He's broken, but I'm going to be there for him. So the next thing I did is I called my dad. And fathers, I want to tell you something in this room. When we're going through a crisis, we just need someone to believe in us. My dad didn't say, he did say, he's like, why don't you come work with me? I was like, absolutely not. My dad, the occupation he works in, it's not with people, and I have to be around people or I will die. Now, I would have to provide for my family, but I will die. So I was like, no, but my dad said, all right, so what are you going to do? I said, Dennis told me I can join his real estate team. And my dad said, okay, I'll pay for your real estate school. I was like, I got two people. I'm in a crisis, but my wife and I tithe. My wife and I tithe all the way up to this crisis. I can't tithe right now because I have $0. But, we had our savings. That was it. But we were faithful. And now here's God bringing provision in my life. Two people that offer to pay for my school. Can I tell you that in this crisis, you know what my wife said to me? We were sitting on the couch. I was depressed. I'm not ever depressed. but like this wasn't like a bird pooped on me. This was like a freight train hit me at 100 miles an hour and I was squished. So my wife, she looks at me, she said, Alexsey, it's gonna be fine. Even if we have to sell our house and live in a 2-bedroom apartment, as long as it's us and our family, I love you. And that's what you need as a husband. A wife that supports and stands by you in the hard seasons. So my dad emulated what my Father in heaven, God, has all the resources. He's got 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills. And here, my father was like, let me pay for that, Alex. I got you. You can work with me, whatever you need to do. So I go online, I look for real estate classes, and I sign up for this class called Hondros. Now at this point, we're not gonna get into politics, but the gas was $5 a gallon. I was like, you got it. So I look, and so, okay, well, there's no classes in Youngstown. They're completely sold out. Okay, there's no classes in Akron. They're sold out. You got to be kidding me. The only classes that are available are in Cleveland, Ohio, where not only the Browns reside there, but I have to drive an hour and a half every day when gas is $5. The enemy loves to attack you while you're weak. Why does gas have to be $5 a gallon when I have to drive back and forth to Cleveland over and over and over again? So I drove back and forth to Cleveland. I'd leave at like 6:30 in the morning, and then I would get home at 7 at night for 3 weeks, and I would drive up to Cleveland and take my classes. And finally, I finished my classes, and I was like, yes, like I got my classes. So Dennis takes me to Best Buy, and he says, pick out any laptop you want. I'm buying you a laptop. And he buys me this beautiful Mac. It's mine, though. Like, he's not going to take it back. I got Dennis to switch to iPhone. Now I got to work on the laptop. Okay. So I'm walking through. So I finished my classes, and then what happens is you have to take a test. Now, it takes the state of Ohio 1 month for you to be able to take a test. So for 1 month, I'm waiting like, I have everything. All I got to do is pass my test so I can become a realtor. And I'm waiting. It was like the DMV. Have you ever seen that movie, like the DMV? It's just so slow. So finally I get a call. You're good to take your test. Now that morning, my test was in Akron. I'm supposed to drive to Akron to take my test. If I don't take my test, I get an automatic fail. I wait another month to take a test for real estate again. And once you do your first transaction, realtors, it takes about 30 days for a transaction to close. So when I start a transaction, I'm a month out from getting paid. So if I don't take this test, I'm a month away from taking the test again, and then I'm another month away from getting my first paycheck. So I'm like, okay. So when that morning, Miranda's got a doctor's appointment for the baby to make sure the baby's healthy. She goes to the doctor's appointment, and the doctor tells her, your blood pressure is too high. We got to send you to the hospital right now. You guys might be having your baby. I was like, come on. Like, I just spent 3 weeks driving back and forth to Cleveland. I'm ready to take my test. If I don't take my test, we're not getting paid for 2 months. We're like our savings is starting to go now. Like, we got to do something. We go to the hospital. I'm like, nurse, you got to tell me, is my wife going to be okay? If I don't take this test, no job. Like, my wife might be okay, but we're going to be living under a bridge or in Dennis's basement. So they're like, okay, go ahead. So they said, all right, she's going to be okay. Everything's fine. She's not having the baby today. Go ahead. So I fly up to Akron. My mind isn't right. I'm all discombobulated. But God strengthened me. I take my test and I pass the first time, the state and national portion. I think it's 120 questions. Is that right, Dennis? 120? Yeah, 120 questions. So I passed the test, and John and Dennis bring me in and like, hey, here's your new office. And it's this huge office with this desks and all this kind of stuff. Now, the other owner of this company is John Arnold. And John says, Alexsey, I want you to look like a realtor. He goes, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to this store, and he gives me the address to the store, and he says, I want you to go buy any suit you want. And then after you buy the suit, I'm going to have it tailored for you. And so John sends me, and he gets this specific suit because he said, Alexsey, when you sell $1 million house, I want you to look like $1 million. He said, you have to look like what you represent. And so this man, John, saw this young kid who had just lost his job and said, I believe in this young man. I see this young man, and this wasn't a pastor. This wasn't someone in the ministry. This was a local businessman. What I needed in that moment was a job. I needed a job. And here was a businessman that saw me and said, I see the gold in you. I see your determination. Go get yourself a suit. Get it tailored to you. And when you're done with your suit, I got a beautiful big office for you. Here was two men up there. So on the right, all the way on the right, that's Dennis. And right in the middle, that's John. On the left, that's Renee. She's our property manager. She's a savage. She's good at what she does. Let me tell you, she is the best property manager in America. But every once in a while, like me and Dennis will be trying to lock in a house, and she's like, 911, 911, 911. And we're like, what's going on, Renee? And she's like, the trash bill's behind. I'm like, that's not 911. Okay. But I remember one specific moment before I started working here at this church. I remember I was at the mall, and I saw John Arnold at the mall, and so him and I were talking for a bit, and we just ran into each other, and he got us Chick-fil-A, and I was telling him about how he impacted my life. And at this point, I wasn't in ministry, I wasn't a pastor, I was just Alexsey the realtor. And someone turned and he said, hey, I wanted to introduce you to my friend. This is Pastor Alexsey. He's a pastor. And you see, it's one thing to hear from everyone in the church that knows you're called. Oh, you're called, you're called, you're called. But I remember going home and I told my wife, I said, Miranda, I'm called to go back in the ministry. I said, you don't understand. Here's this businessman, and he doesn't even realize it. But I was like, when he told me and said he's a pastor, I was like, he was declaring over me what God has always called into me. This was someone that wasn't in the church that was declaring over me what God had called me to do. All right, I'm going to read another scripture real quick. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In a moment in my life where I felt like I was completely surrounded by the enemy, I felt like the devil was coming. Now you have to realize, I had a beautiful family. We have an amazing house. We had 6 months of savings. But the same moment, sometimes our problems become our God, and we focus more on our problems than the God who delivers us from our problems. Sometimes our problems are right here and our perspective is right here, which is why you got to get around some people that have a heavenly perspective, and they're not looking right here, but they see from above. Hey, I know it looks bleak right now, but let me tell you what's coming. God has a plan. God has a purpose. You see, when I was surrounded by the enemy, God was preparing a table for me in the presence of my enemies. And when I was wondering, God, what is going on? I don't understand. I lost my job. I feel lost. I don't know how I'm going to provide. God had two men here, and what they didn't realize, can you throw up the picture of my family again? You see, my family's legacy was attached to the meetings that John and Dennis were having. And the reason why I wasn't a realtor before was because God was preparing J. Arnold Real Estate Advisors for someone like me. And it takes time to set up the table. So there were moments where I was in a crisis, and I had no idea in my crisis that God was preparing my future. I had no idea that he was getting an amazing building ready on 8040 Market Street where I was going to have an office. I had no idea that there were meetings about, hey, here's what we're going to do. These are the different programs we're going to have. And all these times where Dennis and John were sitting at a table, and they're having conversations. They're talking about this business that they're going to start. And they're talking about, hey, we're going to start this real estate business. There was legacy attached to that business. There was legacy attached to those meetings. There was legacy attached to those dinners. There's different people in this room. Some of you are in a crisis right now, and what you can't see is God is preparing a table for you in the presence of your enemies. God is preparing a table for you in the midst of all the stuff that you're struggling with. But there's some of you in this room, and you're business owners, you're leaders, you're managers in the business world, and you're the one sitting at the table, and you have no idea that the stress that you feel right now, that the weight that you feel right now, you feel because of all the lives you're going to impact. Trollios is impacting this church. Trollios is impacting our youth ministry. Maybe you started a grass cutting company, Watkins, and you wonder, why do I feel the pressure and the weight of my business? Because there's legacy attached to your business. Some of you in this room, God's preparing a table for you, and God's using real silverware, and he's using people to start a business, but some of you would rather settle for paper plates. And because you're in a crisis, you'd rather be complacent and compromise in your life and compromise because you don't want to wait for God has. Can I tell you, we serve a crock pot God, not a microwave God. And some of you said, I'm just going to settle for the mundane. I'm going to settle for the ordinary when God is saying, I have called you. I have a plan and a purpose on your life. And there's something beautiful for you. There's real plates. But some of you have settled for McDonald's cheeseburger when God has a filet ready for you. Worship team, you can come on out. What I didn't realize was every obstacle I felt was a stepping stone. Galatians 6:9, this was my verse through my adversity. This was my verse through going through hell. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Do not let us grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Don't lose heart, because in due season you are going to reap a harvest. But you see, sometimes we don't realize that the obstacles in our life, the things that we are struggling with, the things that are coming against us, they're really God setting us up. You see, I had a setback, and I thought this setback was an obstacle, but this obstacle was really a comeback. All right, it's okay. Can I have a couple of you students come up and help me? Yeah, just hop up, and you guys can tear these sheets off. This is so super glued so well, I'm going to tear the whole sign off. There you go. My setback was a comeback, and what I thought God was doing a setback in my life is the second one. You'll see it underneath. There's 2 sheets. There we go. Thanks, Hunter. There we go. What I thought was a setback in my life, and you got to surround yourself with some people that see the gold in you. But my setback was a comeback. God was setting me up to become a realtor. I was excited. God, I know it was a setback, but you were bringing me for a comeback. My sorrow was turned into joy when I was depressed because I wasn't in my calling. Pastor Dave and Liz saw the call of God on my life, and they said that sorrow is going to get turned into joy. You're called to be a youth pastor. You're called to raise up the next generation. My sorrow was turned into joy. My next setback, it was chaotic. There was all kinds of chaos in my life, but my chaos turned into clarity, everybody. You see, the average realtor does 12 deals in a year, according to the National Association of Realtors in 2021. But can I tell you, my first 6 months of a realtor, I was a part of over 30 deals in real estate. 30 deals, almost 3 times the average, because God turned my chaos into clarity. My desperation turned into determination. You see, when I was afraid and scared, I became determined. I'm going to be good at what I did. Can I tell you that this month that I was rated as one of 25 people in Mahoning Valley under 30, the Mahoning Valley Young Professionals Network said, here is a young man that has helped leading Mahoning Valley's future. And they nominated me for that. My doubt became faith. And when I was like, I'll never be back in ministry again, God opened up the doors. It gave me 4 times the size of a church. It gave me 4 times the youth room. Thank you, guys. Come on, worship team. Some of you in this room, your setback is a comeback. It is not over. Your sorrow is going to get turned into joy. Your chaos is going to be clarity. Your desperation will become determination. So here's what I want to do. I want to have 2 altar calls this morning. All right, let's go. Come on, let's go. Altar call 1. If you're in a crisis right now, you're in a storm right now, you feel like everything has been burned with fire, I am here to tell you, it's not over. So if that is you, when I count to 3, you're going to come to this side of the stage, and we're going to pray, because although it looks bleak, although it looks dark, although it looks like you won't make it through, although it looks like the finances aren't going to happen, I'm here to tell you it's not over. And then over here, this is for the managers, the leaders, and the businessmen. And you feel weight. You feel weight. Not necessarily a bad weight, but you feel the weight of being the business owner. You feel the weight of being a manager. You feel the weight of having to push through. I want you to come up here when I count to 3. Because this morning, I want you to know there are legacies like mine attached to your business. My family is attached to businessmen in this region. Why? Because they believed in me. Dennis and Sherry, I want you to come up real quick. And then we're going to count to 3. We're going to have people come up. But I want Dennis to pray for every business owner in this room. I didn't tell him I'm going to do this, but I want you to give it a round of applause for someone that believed in a broken man, for someone that believed in me when I didn't have anything to offer. Come on up. Come on up, and I want you to pray for everybody in this room.
I didn't really dress for this, so I apologize.
What would John Arnold say?
Dear Lord, we just come before you today. We honor you, we worship you, we welcome you in our homes, our lives, our children, dear Lord. We want you in our businesses for us to succeed, dear Lord Jesus. We love you, we praise you. Lord, I pray for all the business people in this room, dear Lord, and online. Please come into their business and help guide them, dear Lord. Help them make the right business decisions, the choices in their staff, the way they run their business, dear Lord Jesus. In your mighty name we pray. Amen.
All right. So when I count to 3, if you're in a crisis, come up here and we're going to pray for breakthrough like never before. If everyone could just stand up for a moment. And when I count to 3, if you're a business owner, just come on up here. All right, worship team, let's go. 1, 2, 3. If you're in a crisis, come up to the right. If you're a business owner, come up to the left. And if we could have our prayer team come up. But if you're in a crisis right now and you're like, I don't see the end, I'm here to tell you it's not over. You're going to see a victory. If we could have all the prayer team just come on up, and we're going to start praying for people. But as you come up, just lift up your hands to heaven.
I'm going to see a victory. I'm going to see a victory.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the message today. And before you leave, make sure you go to our YouTube page and subscribe. And check out our website. New life exists to love God and lead people to live a better story. So whether you're going to continue to listen to us online or come see us in person, we hope to see you again real soon.